The trade station called Horizon Ring floated like a silver halo around a quiet blue star. Ships of every shape and size moved in and out of its docks, glowing trails of light following them like slow-moving comets. Some ships were smooth and round, like polished stones. Others looked sharp and layered, like floating cities made of metal and glass. The station was one of the few places in the galaxy where so many species could meet without fear. For humans, this was their first real step into the wider galactic community. Myra Kincaid stood on the main observation deck, her hands folded behind her back. She wore a simple dark uniform with a small Earth symbol on her shoulder. Her brown hair was tied back neatly, but a few loose strands always seemed to escape no matter how hard she tried to control them. She had been trained for years for this moment, but training could not prepare her for how small Earth suddenly felt in a place like this. Around her, aliens of many kinds walked and floated and glided through the wide hall. Some were tall and thin, with long necks and shining eyes. Others were short and wide, moving on many legs at once. A few did not seem to have solid bodies at all, glowing softly like living clouds. Myra took a slow breath. "First impressions matter," she whispered to herself. Behind her, the human delegation gathered. There were engineers, scientists, artists, and diplomats. Each one had a role to play. Humanity wanted to show the galaxy that they were peaceful, curious, and ready to learn. At the center of the hall, a raised platform waited. This was where the main introductions would happen. The Galactic Council had sent a few representatives, but the most important guest was Threxel. Threxel was famous across several star systems. He was a leader, a thinker, and a symbol of his people's long history. His species, the Cathari, were tall and broad, with smooth, dark blue skin that reflected light like water. On his back was a wide, flat sensory plate, covered in faint glowing lines that moved slowly, like gentle waves. Mara had studied everything she could about the Cathari. She knew they valued respect, memory, and personal space. Their sensory plates were very important, but the human files did not fully explain why. As Threxel entered the hall, the room grew quiet. Even the air seemed to pause. Mara stepped forward with a careful smile. "Welcome to Horizon Ring," she said through the translator in her ear. "On behalf of Earth, we are honored to meet you." Threxel lowered his head slightly. "We observe with interest," he replied, his voice deep and calm like distant thunder. The tension in Mara's chest eased just a little. The first part of the exchange went well. Humans and aliens shared greetings, small gifts, and simple stories about their worlds. A human artist showed glowing images of Earth's oceans and forests. A Cathari speaker shared the sound of wind moving through their crystal cities. Laughter in many different forms filled the hall. Mara began to believe that this might actually work. Then it happened. A human engineer named Tom stood near one of the Cathari assistants. Tom was friendly, nervous, and always trying to be helpful. He had spent most of his life working with machines, not people from other worlds. The assistant was struggling to lift a floating container of trade samples. Tom stepped forward without thinking. "You got this," he said with a smile. As the assistant steadied the container, Tom gave a light, quick pat to what he thought was the alien's back, a simple human gesture of encouragement. But it was not the assistant, it was Threxel. The sound that followed was not a shout, but something deeper, a sharp intake of breath that seemed to shake the floor itself. Threxel turned slowly, the glowing lines on his sensory plate flashing bright and fast. The hall fell into silence. Every eye, every sensor, every floating camera turned toward them. Threxel's voice rose, carrying across the wide space. "How dare you touch my ass, human?" The translator repeated the words in clear, simple English. They echoed against the walls like a broken promise. Tom froze. His face turned pale. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean—" Mara rushed forward, her heart pounding. She raised her hands in a calming gesture. "Please," she said quickly, "this was a mistake, a misunderstanding." But the damage was already done. Aliens whispered among themselves in strange sounds and shifting colors. Some stepped back. Others leaned in closer, curious and concerned. The moment was being recorded, shared, and sent across the galaxy. Mara could almost see the headlines forming in distant star systems. "Humans insult Cathari leader. Earth fails first test." Threxel stood very still. The glowing lines on his back slowed, but they did not fade. "That was not a simple mistake," he said. "You touched the center of myself," Mara swallowed. "We did not know," she replied honestly. We are still learning. That is why we came. Threxel studied her. His dark eyes reflected the bright lights of the station and the nervous faces of the human team. Learning has a cost, he said. Mara felt the weight of the entire planet on her shoulders. Tom stepped forward, his hands shaking. I never meant to disrespect you, he said. Where I come from, that gesture means I believe in you. It means support. The hall grew quiet again. Threxel tilted his head slightly. You show belief by touching? Sometimes, Tom said. We're not very good at keeping our feelings inside. A few aliens made soft sounds that might have been laughter. Mara took the opening. Humans are a young species among the stars, she said. We make mistakes, but we also try to fix them. Please allow us the chance to do that now. Threxel turned away for a moment, facing the wide window that looked out into space. Stars drifted past like slow snow. This moment will be remembered, he said. By my people, by yours, by many others who are watching. Mara nodded. Then let it be remembered as the moment we chose understanding instead of anger. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Threxel turned back. I will listen, he said, but listening does not mean forgiving. Relief and fear mixed in Mara's chest. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. The formal exchange ended early. The mood had changed, like a storm cloud passing over a clear sky. Humans gathered together, whispering urgently. Aliens kept their distance, watching carefully. Mara pulled Tom aside. Are you okay? She asked. He nodded, though his eyes were still wide. I think I just caused a galactic incident. You didn't mean to, she said gently, but now we have to make it right. She looked back at Threxel, who stood with his advisors, the glowing lines on his back moving slowly, thoughtfully. Somewhere out there, across light years of space, billions of beings were about to learn one thing about humanity. They were clumsy. They were emotional. And they were brave enough to step into the unknown anyway. Mara straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. This was only the beginning, and the future of Earth might depend on what they did next. The Hall of Horizon Ring felt different after the incident. The lights were still bright, and ships still passed by the wide windows, but the energy in the air had changed. Where there had once been excitement and curiosity, now there was caution. Mara Kincaid walked through the quiet corridor that led to the human guest quarters. Her footsteps echoed softly against the smooth metal floor. Behind her, Tom followed with his head down, his hands clasped together like he was holding onto something invisible. I really didn't mean it, he said for what felt like the 10th time. Mara slowed and turned to face him. I know, she said, and Threxel knows it too, but knowing and feeling are two very different things. Tom nodded. I just wanted to help. Sometimes, Mara replied gently, helping means stopping yourself. They reached a wide door that slid open with a soft sound. Inside, the rest of the human team waited. Scientists, linguists, and diplomats all looked up as Mara and Tom entered. The room was filled with low voices and worried faces. Doctor. Lion Park, the lead linguist, stepped forward. The Galactic Council has paused all public exchanges, she said. They want to see how we handle this. Mara took a seat at the center table. So do I. A large screen on the wall lit up, showing a detailed image of Threxel and his species. Lines of text scrolled beside it, written in both human language and Cathari symbols. What exactly did Tom touch? Mara asked. Dr. Park tapped the screen. The sensory plate. But it's more than just a body part. For the Cathari, it holds memory patterns, emotional history, personal identity. Tom's eyes widened. I touched his memories. In a way, Dr. Park said. To them, it's like someone opening a book that only you are supposed to read. The room fell silent. Mara leaned back in her chair, staring at the glowing image. We need to apologize in a way they understand, she said, not just with words. A young scientist named Eli raised his hand. What if we show them how humans connect, not just tell them? Doctor. Park turned toward him. What do you mean? Eli stood up, his excitement cutting through the tension. We've been working on shared experience tech, a way to let two minds feel the same moment, not thoughts, just emotions and senses. Tom looked up. Like walking in someone else's shoes? Exactly, Eli said. Mara's heart beat faster. Could it work between species? Eli hesitated. We've never tried, but if it does, Threxel might understand what that touch meant to Tom. And if it does? Dr. Park asked. Then we might make things worse, Eli admitted. Mara closed her eyes for a moment. The future of Earth balanced on a choice between doing nothing and risking everything. Prepare it, she said. We'll ask Threxel if he's willing. The message was sent through official channels, wrapped in careful, respectful language. The waiting that followed felt endless. Mara walked alone through a quiet observation hallway, watching stars drift past. She thought about Earth. About crowded cities, open fields, loud laughter, and quiet nights. Humans were messy, emotional, always reaching out even when they didn't fully understand what they were reaching for. Her communicator chimed. "Threxel has agreed," Dr. Park's voice said. "But he says if this feels like another insult, he will leave the station." Mara exhaled slowly. "That's fair." The meeting room was prepared carefully. Soft light filled the space. The shared experience device sat in the center, a smooth, glowing ring with two open spaces facing each other. Threxel entered with two Cathari advisors. His presence filled the room not with threat but with weight. History walked in with him. Mara stepped forward. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I come to observe," Threxel replied, "not to forgive." "That's all we ask," Mara said. Eli explained the device in simple terms, using gestures and slow words. Threxel listened without interrupting. "You will let me feel your kind?" Threxel asked. "Yes," Eli said, "and one of us will feel yours at the same time." Threxel looked at Tom, who stood near the wall, pale but steady. "Will it be him?" Threxel asked. Tom swallowed. "If you want," he said, "I should be the one." Threxel studied him for a long moment, then nodded. They took their places in the ring. The device hummed softly as it activated. Light flowed between them like a slow river. At first, nothing happened. Then Tom gasped. He felt a wide open space, like standing on a high cliff under a dark sky filled with moving lights. He felt weight and age and memory, like carrying the stories of thousands of years on his back. He felt Threxel's pride, his caution, his deep connection to his people. Across from him, Threxel stiffened. He felt warmth, not heat but something softer. A small, messy room filled with laughter, the sound of hands clapping, the feeling of someone standing beside you, not in front or behind, but with you. He felt human moments. High fives after success, arms around shoulders after failure, the simple comfort of touch in a lonely world. He felt Tom's nervousness, his hope, his deep, honest wish to help. The device dimmed, the room was silent. Tom wiped his eyes, not fully understanding why they were wet. Threxel stood very still. The glowing lines on his sensory plate moved slowly, forming patterns none of the humans had seen before. "You are loud," Threxel said at last. A nervous laugh escaped Eli. "But," Threxel continued, "you are not empty." Mara stepped forward carefully. "We never meant to be." Threxel looked at Tom. "Your touch was not an attempt to take," he said. "It was an attempt to give." Tom nodded. "That's all it was." Threxel turned to his advisors. They spoke quietly in their own language, their voices low and flowing. The moment stretched. Finally, Threxel faced Mara again. "This does not erase what happened," he said, "but it changes how it is remembered." Mara felt her chest loosen just a little. Outside the room, word spread. Aliens gathered near screens and windows, watching, waiting. The story of the strange human apology traveled fast, carried by curiosity and quiet hope. For the first time since the incident, humans and aliens stood closer together again. Mara watched Threxel walk toward the exit. Before he left, he paused. "Your species does not hide what it feels," he said. "This is dangerous." Mara smiled softly. "We know." "But," Threxel added, "it is also powerful." He left without another word. Mara leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tom walked up beside her. "Did we just fix it?" "We started to," she said. "That's all anyone ever really does." Far beyond Horizon Ring, across distant stars and quiet worlds, a new idea began to spread. Humans were not perfect, they were not careful. But they were willing to open themselves, even when it hurt. And in a galaxy full of walls and borders, that made them something different, something worth watching. Myra looked back at the glowing ring in the center of the room. This was no longer just about one mistake. It was about what kind of species humanity would choose to be among the stars. And the galaxy was paying attention. The news of what happened in the shared experience room did not stay quiet for long. Across Horizon Ring, screens lit up with images of humans and Cathari standing together instead of apart. Whispers moved through halls and docking bays, carried in voices, colors, and soft electronic signals. Mara Kincaid stood near a wide window, watching a long silver ship drift away from the station. It belonged to a species she did not recognize, but she wondered what story its crew had just heard. Every ship that left carried a piece of humanity's first impression with it. Behind her, the human team gathered again. This time, their faces looked different. There was still worry, but also something new. Hope. Dr. Park walked over, holding a small device that showed messages scrolling across its screen. "The council has asked for a full presentation," she said. "Not just about the incident, about us." Mara turned. "About humans," Dr. Park nodded. "They want to understand why we act the way we do." Mara let out a quiet laugh. "We're still trying to figure that out ourselves." The presentation hall was larger than the first meeting room. Rows of seats curved around a wide central space. Above, a soft light shifted colors to match the mood of the speakers. Today, it glowed a calm, pale blue. Aliens of many species filled the seats. Some floated. Some sat, some stood very still, their bodies shaped like living statues. At the center of it all sat Threxel, his tall form steady and watchful. Mara walked to the front with slow, careful steps. She did not carry notes. She did not carry a script. She carried a story. "We came to the stars because we were curious," she began, "not because we were ready." The translator carried her words across the hall, changing them into sounds and signals each species could understand. "On our world, humans are born helpless," she continued. "We can't walk. We can't speak, we can't even feed ourselves. We survive because someone reaches out and touches us, holds us, helps us." Images appeared behind her. A human child taking its first steps, two people laughing together, a group of workers lifting something heavy side by side. "Touch for us is not just a movement," Myra said. "It is a promise. It means you are not alone." Threxel's glowing lines shifted softly. Myra stepped aside and Eli walked forward. He activated the shared experience device again, but this time it was set to send, not receive. A wave of gentle light moved through the hall. The aliens did not see images. They felt moments. They felt the rush of standing at the edge of a high place, about to jump into deep water for the first time. They felt the quiet comfort of sitting beside someone in silence. They felt the nervous joy of meeting someone new and hoping, deeply, to be accepted. Across the room, some aliens shifted. Some glowed brighter. Some grew very still. Threxel closed his eyes. When the light faded, the hall remained silent for a long moment. Then a small, round alien near the front made a soft, chiming sound that might have been laughter. "You feel too much," it said. Myra smiled. "We've been told." Threxel stood slowly, the room focused on him. "Your kind walks through the galaxy with open doors," he said. "Most of us build walls." Myra met his gaze. "We get hurt a lot," she admitted. "And yet you keep opening them," Threxel said. "Yes," Myra replied, "because sometimes someone walks through." A low, thoughtful sound moved through the crowd. After the presentation, the station felt lighter. Humans and aliens stood in mixed groups again, talking, sharing food and stories in careful, curious ways. Tom leaned against a railing, watching a tall, thin alien try a human snack bar with clear suspicion. "Think we're famous now?" he asked. Mara joined him. "Infamous, maybe." Tom laughed. "I can live with that." Threxel approached them, his steps slow and steady. "You have changed the way this moment will be recorded," he said. Mara nodded. "We wanted it to mean something more than a mistake." Threxel studied Tom. "You still act before you think." Tom smiled weakly. "Probably always will." Threxel's glowing lines shifted into a pattern that Mara now recognized as something like amusement. "Your kind is strange," Threxel said, "but not without value." Later that cycle, Myra walked alone through a quiet section of the station. The lights were low, and the stars outside the windows looked like scattered dust across a dark floor. She thought about Earth again, about crowded streets and open skies. About people who argued and loved and tried, sometimes badly, to be better. Her communicator chimed. "Message from the council," Dr. Park's voice said. Myra stopped and listened. "They want to establish a new role for humanity," Dr. Park continued. "They're calling it cultural guides, mediators. They think we might be good at helping species understand each other." Myra leaned against the cool wall, surprised. "All this," she said quietly, "because of one bad touch." "Because of what we did after," Dr. Park replied. The next gathering was smaller, more private, just the council, Threxel, and the human leaders. Threxel spoke first. "The galaxy is full of old wounds," he said. "Old misunderstandings. We have tried to solve them with rules and distance." He looked at Myra. "Your kind tries with closeness." Myra nodded. "It doesn't always work. But when it does," Threxel said, "it changes more than a single moment." The council agreed to a trial. Humans would help with a long-standing disagreement between two species that had not spoken in generations. Not as judges, not as rulers, as listeners. When the meeting ended, Mara felt both proud and terrified. "This is bigger than us," Tom said as they walked back to the human quarters. Mara smiled. "Most good things are." That night, she stood by the window in her room, looking out at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, humans would soon walk into other worlds, other stories, other mistakes waiting to happen. She knew they would fail again. They would say the wrong thing. They would touch when they shouldn't. They would misunderstand. But she also knew they would stay. They would listen. They would try to make it right. On the far side of the station, Threxel stood in a quiet chamber of his own, looking at a small recording of the shared experience. He watched humans laughing, reaching, stumbling forward together. "Dangerous," he murmured. But this time the word did not sound like a warning. It sounded like a possibility. Mara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not written in strength or speed or technology. It was written in moments like this. Small, awkward, honest. And somehow powerful enough to reach across the stars. The trial began quietly. No grand stage, no bright lights, just a simple room with a wide round table and 3 doors. One door opened for the humans, one for the first alien group, one for the second. Mara Kincaid stood in the center, hands resting lightly on the smooth surface of the table. She felt the same nervous energy she had felt on her first day at Horizon Ring, but this time it was deeper. This was not about a mistake anymore. This was about whether humanity truly belonged among the stars. The 2 alien species entered from opposite sides. The first were the viral, tall, thin, and sharp-edged in both body and movement. Their voices sounded like glass chimes in the wind. The second were the molari. Short, wide, and slow, with deep, rumbling voices that felt more like vibrations than sound. They did not look at each other. They had not spoken in over 200 years. Myra took a breath. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Both sides remained silent. Tom stood behind her along with Dr. Park and Eli. None of them were there to speak. They were there to listen. Myra pulled out a small human object and placed it on the table. It was simple, a worn, old photograph of Earth. A group of people standing together in the rain, smiling, arms around each other. "This is my family," she said. "We don't always agree. Sometimes we hurt each other. Sometimes we stop talking for a long time." The viral made a faint, sharp sound. But Mara continued, "We always remember why we stood together in the first place." The molari shifted slightly. "We're not here to fix you," Mara said. "We're here to understand you." The viral leader finally spoke. "Understanding did not save our skies." The molari leader replied at the same time. "Your actions burned our waters." The tension in the room rose like a storm cloud. Myra did not interrupt. She let them speak. For hours, the 2 sides told their stories, of loss, of fear. Of moments that grew into legends and then into walls that no one knew how to tear down. Myra listened. Tom listened. The humans did not argue. They did not defend. They did not judge. They just stayed. At one point, the molari leader paused and looked at Myra. "Why do you not speak?" Myra answered gently. "Because this isn't our story." Silence followed. Then something small happened. A viral advisor made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. The molari leader tilted his head. For the first time, they looked at each other, not with anger. With curiosity. The meeting ended without a solution, but when they left, they did not turn away from each other. Myra leaned back against the wall when the room was empty, her legs feeling weak. "That was something," Tom said. "It's a start," Myra replied. Word spread fast. Other species began to ask for humans to sit in their meetings, not to speak for them, not to decide, just to be there. Humans became known as the ones who stayed in uncomfortable rooms, the ones who didn't rush away from silence, the ones who didn't hide when things got messy. On Horizon Ring, a phrase started to appear in different languages and forms. "Call the humans." Threxel watched all of this from a distance at first. He saw humans sitting between enemies, listening to stories that were heavy with history. He saw them laugh with strangers, share food, and make small, clumsy gestures of connection. One cycle, he approached Myra as she sat alone near a window. "You have made yourselves useful," he said. Myra smiled. "We were aiming for helpful." Threxel's glowing lines moved slowly. "Your kind does not lead from above." Myra shook her head. "We walk beside." The Galactic Council gathered one final time. This time the room was full, more species than ever before. The air felt charged with expectation. Threxel stood at the center. The galaxy has long measured worth by power, he said, by fleets, by technology, by territory. He turned toward the human delegation. But this species has shown us another measure. Mara felt her heart beat faster. They bring no great weapons, Threxel continued. They bring no ancient empire. A soft ripple of sound moved through the crowd. They bring themselves, Mara swallowed. The council proposes a new role, Threxel said. Humanity will stand as cultural mediators, walkers between worlds, a bridge where there were only gaps. The room went quiet. Then slowly, one by one, lights, sounds, and colors of agreement filled the space. Mara closed her eyes for just a moment. They had done it. After the meeting, Tom found Mara near the original hall where everything had started. Hard to believe this all began with me touching the wrong place, he said. Mara laughed softly. The galaxy works in strange ways. Threxel approached them. That moment will be remembered, he said, not for the words that were spoken, but for what followed. Tom looked up at him. I'm still really sorry. Threxel paused. Then carefully he lifted one long arm and placed his hand on Tom's shoulder. The glowing lines on his back moved in a calm, steady pattern. This, Threxel said, I understand. Tom froze. Mara held her breath. Then Tom smiled. Outside the station, ships came and went, carrying stories of humans to distant stars and quiet worlds. They were not known as the strongest. They were not known as the smartest. They were known as the ones who reached out, sometimes too fast, sometimes too awkward, but always with the hope that on the other side of that reach, someone would reach back. Myra stood by the wide window one last time before returning to Earth. The stars looked closer now, not because they had moved, but because humanity had. She thought about the future, about new mistakes waiting to happen, new misunderstandings, new moments that could either break or build something bigger than any one species. She smiled. Humans were ready, not because they were perfect, but because they were willing to try. Far across the galaxy, the story would be told in many ways. Some would laugh at it, some would study it, some would pass it down as a lesson. It would begin with a strange moment on a quiet station, a voice that said, "How dare you touch my ass, human?" And it would end with something much larger. A galaxy that learned what could happen when a small, emotional, imperfect species decided to care enough to stay.